critical element here is why is this important for Nova SBE. I'd like to talk about 2 or 3 things. First one is why this matters for Nova SBE and why Nova SBE is so committed to this. A second point which had to do with the value creation wheel itself and the innovation driven it. I'll make a few remarks about the health sector, although I'm not an expert, unlike Pedro, so I'll try to stay off that element. But I also would like to talk a bit about this more generally and how I see this in terms of the strategic development of Portugal and maybe share some of my own views on this, okay? So number one, from the point of view of the school, from the point of view of the university, this is an example of the way I think at Nova SBE we look at how universities should be in the future. Progress will come within the space of co-creation between companies and business. The time when, between companies and universities. The time when universities were closed, the time when universities were not sharing what they were producing, the way they were thinking with business is over. And the only way to move forward is actually for these 2 elements, business, innovation, and schools, universities, to come together. And this project is interesting because it does exactly this. Many of the people that are here are PhD students doing their research in the concept of university. Others are people from companies that are actually looking forward to see their business grow. And this coming together is critical. And when I go to conferences outside from our accreditation agencies that are thinking about the future of education, all you hear every single time is this. Universities need to change, universities need to move closer to business, universities need to move closer to the applied sector, and we at Nova would like to really push this at a higher level. But this framework it's not just a matter of partnerships, it's the way you do this partnership. And this idea of the value creation wheel is interesting because it just says that this partnership between universities and business is a partnership of co-creation. What do I mean by this? What I mean is that it's not just that university is listening to business and business is listening to the universities. It's actually that whatever comes out from a dynamic process where universities are within business listening, adjusting their language, coming up with new ways of solving the problems, understanding that research should be focused on the kinds of things that companies are in need of. So universities are open to this, are listening, and are changing themselves through the process, and business themselves are also supporting universities, trying to help them increase their impact, trying to help their PhD program. So it's not just that these guys are working together, it's they're working together really in the same process and learning from each other constantly, right? And this element of co-creation is very important. I think we don't do enough of it in the Portuguese universities. I don't think we do enough of it in universities around the world, in Europe and around the world. And we need to do more of this. And I'd like to congratulate Luis first for this, for actually having a project where he is in the companies, is speaking to the companies, is listening to them and speaking to them at the same time. And he's not doing just once, and then once the result is over, he's going home. The whole process about continuing to do this and make the process go further. In the context of the VCW, I've spoken to different companies about it, and this is what I learned. They not only like to listen from what he says, but they like to know that he's listening to what they're saying to him. Okay? And I think this is very important. This is not easy. The language of universities and the language of companies is not the same. And it requires an effort that people start speaking the same language. Most of the problems in the world are related to language. We speak the same language in terms of the way linguists think, but we don't speak the same language in the way we see our business, right? And so if we actually start speaking the same language, and that means speaking more to each other, I think we're going to make much more progress and generate much more value. So this element of co-creation, of actually people learning to speak the same language, companies and universities starting to speak the same language, is something that I think the value creation will contribute to, and other initiatives. And for us at the School of Business and Economics, it's critical because this is the way we're trying to build it. We're doing it, for example, within our programs. Okay? Our academic programs, our master's programs, our undergraduate programs are all about speaking to business, telling them what we think is the future, but also listening to them what they think is the future, and constantly changing to adjust to this. Its second point is related to the VCW itself. Okay? This is a methodology that is about helping innovation, as Pedro pointed out. And I think it's a methodology that, because it thrives on co-creation, will bring innovation very far. It has been used innovation is obviously the way the future will go, although I think it's also the way the past has been. But I think innovation for the future has to be much more methodic. Okay? And method for innovation is exactly what the VCW is about. It's been used to deal with problems and crises and paradoxes in areas such as aerospace industry, astronomy, biotechnology, chemicals, energy, health sector, financial sector, ONGs, tourism. And so this aspect of having an innovation methodology that can be applied throughout the sectors is very important. And here, so is the time to thank Luis for his work, not only his work in his intellectual work in putting this together and trying to come up with a way of making innovation more productive, but also with his whole entrepreneurial work of actually transforming an intellectual idea into something that can be directly leveraged by companies in the way they do their business and making them more productive. And again, it's what I was mentioning in the beginning. It's not just about intellectual work being done at universities, but also the entrepreneurship to make it relevant and to make it have impact. Okay? A couple of last few notes on the health sector. It is a very vibrant sector for the Portuguese economy, and it's a very vibrant sector for scientific production. I think we are at the cutting edge. I had a few numbers here that I'd just like to share with you, just to give you a sense. Okay? In 2008, the number of publication in the health sector in Portugal was around 4,000. It reached 7,000 now. Okay? We've grown exponentially in terms of the number of publications in the health sector. The production of patents, for example, was 17 in 2008. 2013 is about 39. Okay? So we're really producing more. And by the way, what is very interesting in the health sector is that we are producing more research, we are producing more patents, so we are producing more scientific output with fewer people. And that's quite interesting, although it's a challenge, because I think one element that we have to think about, with fewer people and with lower investment in R&D, which has not been rising so fast. And so, because we know that these things are in a pipeline, we have to wonder if this is going to keep on for the future. And since I have the Ministry of the Economy here, I'd like to throw this, one of the challenges, we need to keep up our scientific production, and the last years have been difficult, we all know. It's important to do it. But I think to keep pushing and maybe to rethink some of the financial and the organizational aspects to keep young people invested in this future. But I think one of the elements that we need to correct, and let me just make another remark. So if you look at the exports, okay, so I was talking about the scientific output, and I was talking about the resources that are being used in the health sector. If you look at the output, and particularly if you measure exports in the health sector were 700 million in 2009, just to give you an idea, and were 1 billion, or, well, 1 billion in English, milhões in Portuguese, 1 billion in 2014. So we have, scientific output has increased, the resources onto the health sector have not increased so much, and exports has increased dramatically. Okay? And I think my last point is really to try to expand this to the level of the country. Because one of the elements that we have not had in the previous ways of innovation is that we have made innovation, but we have not connected it to the competitive advantage of Portugal. We have spent lots of money on innovation in years past until 2011, but we have not had economic growth. We have not had growth in exports. Okay? And so this is a challenge to that model of innovation that we need to rethink. Okay? We need to link innovation much more closely, because if you see indicators of R&D expenditure, if you see indicators of everything, of resources going to innovation, they dramatically increase up to the crisis. Okay? And yet, we have had no economic growth and very little growth in exports. Okay? This wave now seems to be much more attached to exports, and that is very important, because we can just think of innovation generally, but that's not enough, because if we just think of innovation naturally, innovation doesn't pay off. Innovation doesn't generate returns unless you leverage it with your value chain, with your productions, with your competitiveness, and this means finding your place in the world. Right? So there can be no idea for innovation that is disconnected with what is the strategy for Portugal's role in the world. And the health sector is very interesting in that respect, because Portugal does have competitive advantages And again, there's clearly let me just find here, there's clearly a strategic role for health in terms of as Portugal being a place where foreigners and other people around the world come to get treatment, in public hospitals and in private hospitals. That's not the issue, okay? It is interesting to promote the scientific services, technological services, specialized services, even the realization of clinical trials. So there is a strategy for the health sector to actually put Portugal in the world. And if you actually do this, and you connect this with a layer of high-level innovation, then you can reach success. And because success means having output in science, but making that output in science generate returns and exports to make sure that they generate an economic return. And so the health sector is really one of the very interesting sectors to do this, because we can actually generate innovation and have high-paying jobs and all that kind of stuff, and position ourselves for the world in a way that nobody else can just take our innovation and make money out of it. Right? And so this link of innovation with just generating returns from it is something that I think we need to be more careful about and make sure that we generate. So I think I'll just leave here my notes with a desire, with a hope that with the value creation wheel we can do both things. We can try to generate more innovation, engage more the scientific community, generating more innovation connected to business, and do this in sectors that allow you to transform intellectual output into business practice and into export and economic returns. And you need to do the three things, okay? Innovation, from innovation to business practice, and from business practice to exports and profitability, because if you don't do the three layers, you're not generating resources, and if you don't generate resources, if you don't generate revenue, Portuguese people are not going to live better, jobs are not going to come around, standards of living are not going to increase. And so I think it's very important to, when you think of the innovation value chain, to do the three things. Again, the intellectual output, bringing it to business and to companies, and then making sure that this is generating the returns and the exports that not only generate profit, but generate profit in a sustainable way by ensuring the competitiveness of the country. Okay? Anyway, these are a few notes. I have a tendency to speak more than I plan to, but I hope this has been useful. Thank you very much, and I enjoy a very successful conference.